Dr. Avishnag Paul's going to join us in a little bit. He's the infectious disease specialist with Sanford Hospital. We'll talk about the new protocol and the new standards when it comes to COVID with the CDC and their decision when it came to going from 10 days to 5 days of isolation. But, if you're a regular viewer of us down the road, one of our contacts and the best contact, in my personal opinion, one of the best news I would say men, but that's not right. One of the best news members and individuals that gets out accurate news in the state of Minnesota is Bill Werner with the Minnesota News Network. We want a chance to visit with him and get a little review on what the year has been like. Let's bring him in. Bill, good to have you coming down the road with us
Joel.
again.
Yeah, it's great to be with you as we close out the year here now. It's been quite a year, hasn't it?
Yeah. When I think of what Minnesota went through this year, obviously you got the attention of the nation in a way that you didn't want the attention of the nation.
Sure.
Grade Minnesota's 2021. I think I know what the grade is going to be.
Okay. And, it's interesting, Joel, because you say 2021 and 2020 was even a tougher year, right?
Yeah.
But it was kind of all the aftermath of that. So your question is kind of how did the state do in 2021? Probably have to give it somewhere around a B minus, maybe.
Yeah.
B as in Baker. Okay. We're dealing with a lot of real tough problems, and as you say, the nation, we were in the eyes of the nation and really the world, certainly in 2020, right, with George Floyd, but the aftermath of this and the sentencing of Derek Chauvin, and then the Kimberly Potter trial, right, which just ended just before Christmas with a guilty verdict. All of those are the kinds of things that I think probably surprised a lot of people around the world. I mean, not everybody in the world knows where Minnesota is, but those who do, probably thought, this happened there? And it's not a point of pride for anyone that it did happen here. But, the question is, what do we do with it, right? And that's why I say the B minus, because, some things moved forward and some things did not.
Well, Derek Chauvin's in jail.
Right.
And that is a good thing. Now I'm showing my personal bias when it comes to it, but that's a good thing. He was guilty of murder, and he was found guilty of murder. And more than anything, obviously, you hope that there's justice for the Floyd family and for what happened to George Floyd. But I was scared. I really, Minnesota, I was born in Breckenridge, Minnesota.
Right.
3 days later, Minnesota kicked me out, and I went back to North Dakota. But the truth of the matter is, Minnesota has always been part of my home. Living as close to Minnesota as what I do. I'm 15 minutes from Minnesota, working in Fargo, where I'm in Moorhead all the time,
back and forth. Yeah.
Following Minnesota is part of my life, and I was scared. I was really scared of if they got that verdict, in my opinion, wrong, what was going to happen to Minnesota, Bill.
Well, certainly with Derek Chauvin, I mean, folks, and the verdict came down, of course, in 2020, but then there was a question of the sentencing as well, right, and what was going to happen in that. There was nervousness there, and then even very recently here, just before Christmas, of course, the Kim Potter trial. She convicted of first-degree manslaughter in the shooting death of Daunte Wright. That verdict came down just before Christmas. Nervousness there also. There's going to be speculation for some period of time by analysts, Monday morning quarterbacks, and all types, right, about whether justice was done in that case or whether the jury was pushed by popular opinion, needed to have a conviction, right? And I'm not saying one way or the other, but this is obviously what people are talking about in a lot of areas relative to the Kim Potter trial. Probably less so with Derek Chauvin, I think, but certainly with Potter.
You look at the manslaughter charges and the verdict, the guilty verdict that came along with that. What's been the response, afterwards? Because I don't know of too many people that didn't believe this was an accident, that didn't find this as an accident, and that led to conversations about what manslaughter is.
That's exactly right.
And so people getting into the whole definition of manslaughter, and
Legally,
so
really in the weeds. Yeah.
so
Yeah. And it's a
what
question.
was Minnesota's take on that? What did you hear from people?
The first degree manslaughter, it has implicit with it, and I'm not an attorney, okay, nor am I a lawmaker, but implicit with it, it has a certain sense of recklessness, cavalier attitude, perhaps, toward the welfare of others, right? In other words, that no, I didn't plan to kill that person. However, I could have reasonably foreseen that that would have happened. I perhaps even was not careful enough to be sure that it did not happen. That's kind of the sense of a first degree manslaughter conviction. Does that apply in Kim Potter's case? Most people I've talked to, not all, but a good number of people that I've talked to believes through the testimony in court and the videos and so on that she didn't intend to do it. So then the question is, was this would a reasonable officer have made a mistake like this? In other words, drawn a gun when they intended to pull their taser? And that's really where the debate comes in. That is where the information we have, the jury decided pretty soon in its deliberations that on a second degree manslaughter conviction, which is a lesser degree of culpability. But the information we have is that what they really struggled with, and that what prompted perhaps their question to the judge just a day or so into deliberations, about what if we don't reach a verdict, what happens then? Okay, that was prompted by their struggle with the first degree issue of whether there's first degree manslaughter or not. These are tough questions. I mean, you need to know not only what is in a person's mind, but also what can you reasonably expect them to do under the circumstances. Police officer, different kind of a person than the average population, right? I mean, different level of responsibilities, has a lethal weapon that they're licensed to carry. They're confronting suspects in circumstances, and they go into, they don't know what's going to happen, right? Okay. All these things play in, and that's why it's a very complex case. I think, I think it almost in some ways is more complex than the Derek Chauvin case. Derek Chauvin case certainly got a lot more attention, although Kim Potter case got international attention as well. But I think the Potter case legally, fundamentally, is probably more complex than the Chauvin case was.
Want to talk a little bit about Governor Walz. He
Yes.
hasn't avoided the tough subjects. Governor Walz coming down much harder than the governor of North Dakota or South Dakota, governor of Montana, where a lot of people are viewing this show. Governor Walz coming out, and one of the statements that he stuck to was, people that said, I'll vote against you because of your stance when it comes to COVID and because of the restrictions that you placed.
Right.
His standard answer was, I hope you're still alive to vote against me. When you look at Governor Walz and the price politically he's paid in Minnesota, where does he sit now? Because he's seeking re-election. Where does this go, Bill?
And Joel, and I seem to always come back to this, even on the national scene. We've seen presidents or challengers to presidents saying the economy's good or the economy's no good, and the person who's in office now is responsible for that, right? In many ways, the things that Tim Walz is dealing with, and that all the other governors, and that the president, and that the former president dealt with, are I don't want to say beyond their control, but they're bigger even than politics. And I think most people would agree with that that's the case with COVID. I mean, here you have something, we thought we had a handle on it. Well, maybe we don't. We think we do. No, we don't. And on and on and on. It goes like that. And so, it's a question of, first of all, how do the voters judge Tim Walz in the short term? In other words, between now and the November election, right? Republicans are going to look at that much differently than Democrats, but it's going to be the swing voters that are going to make the decision, folks in the middle. And then the question beyond that, and maybe I'm being evasive, Joel, by saying this, is what is history's judgment of Tim Walz? Will history say he bungled it? And there are those who will make that accusation against the former president. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with or disagree with it. They'll make that accusation against the former president. Okay. But will history say Tim Walz just botched, he didn't do what he should have, and so on and so forth? Or will history say he did the best he could under the circumstances, under an extremely tough set of circumstances? And that is yet to be written in history.
That's going to be part of the deciding factor. Even though you're talking about history, you're right to say it that way, but it's going to be part of what's written in that election. Bill, always good to talk to you. Thanks for giving us your time.
Yeah, and everybody take care, stay healthy.
Okay? Have a good New Year, Bill. Appreciate it.